What if the elevator you've taken 1,000 times suddenly decided to go somewhere else? Not to a different floor, not to a maintenance level, but to a reality that wasn't supposed to be accessed. A place just beneath the surface of our world, hidden in the static of old security cameras, in the silence between subway stations, in the empty hallways of abandoned hotels. Somewhere familiar, but deeply, fundamentally wrong. That's what happened to me. And if you've ever felt that strange pull, the urge to step into a place you shouldn't be, the sense that something just behind reality is waiting for you, then you're not alone. They call it the seventh beyond, or sometimes the seventh layer, a dimension hidden behind cracks in space, time, and logic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with sirens or flashing lights. It begins with a flicker, a button you don't remember pressing, a floor that isn't on any blueprint, a hallway where all the lights buzz just slightly out of sync. And once you're inside, the rules change. You've probably seen the stories online. A TikTok that cuts off just before someone vanishes behind a hotel mirror. A CCTV feed from a school where a person walks into a corridor and never comes out. Urban legends, right? Creepypasta content meant to scare kids. But what if they're not? What if all those strange accounts, the whispered warnings, the missing time, the eerie feeling that you're being watched through your own reflection, are just fragments of something bigger? Something real? This isn't just about fear. It's about what happens when you look too closely at the fabric of the world and realize it's been stitched together with missing threads. I didn't want to find this place. I wasn't searching for another dimension or chasing conspiracies. I just stepped into an elevator, a normal one, in a normal building. But something was different. The numbers flickered. There was a low humming mechanical, but somehow alive. When the doors opened, it was not my floor. It wasn't anyone's. There was light, but no warmth. The hallway looked familiar, like a hotel I once stayed in, but the decor was a decade out of date. The air had this density, like I was underwater. My phone had no signal, and every step I took echoed wrong, like the building was too empty to be real. That's when I started to realize I wasn't in my world anymore. This story isn't just mine. It's part of something older, something layered beneath everything we know. Some call it a parallel dimension. Others think it's the result of a failed experiment, a Cold War-era attempt to pierce the boundaries of human perception. A few believe it's spiritual, a realm caught between life and death, sanity and madness. All I know is, it's there. It's watching. And once you see it, really see it, it starts following you back. So if you've ever had that feeling, that flicker of dread before stepping into a dark hallway, that moment when your reflection seems a second too slow, maybe you've already brushed against it. Maybe you've already touched the seventh beyond. And if that thought sends chills down your spine, then keep watching, because what I'm about to show you isn't just a story, it's a warning. If you've made it this far, if your heart's beating a little faster and part of you recognizes what I'm talking about, even if you can't explain why, then you're exactly who this video was meant for. This isn't just a creepy story to listen to and forget. It's a breadcrumb, a key, a signal to those who felt it too. So if you've ever stepped into an empty hallway and felt like you were being watched, if you've looked at an elevator panel and noticed a floor that doesn't exist anymore, or never did, if you've woken up unsure whether the world around you has shifted just slightly out of place, then you're not alone. Comment, I felt it. If any part of this hit something deep inside you, I read everything you share. And trust me, you'd be surprised how many others have been to the edges of something unexplainable. And if you're into mysteries like this, stories that blur the line between conspiracy, the paranormal, and what we think is reality, then make sure you subscribe. This channel exists for people like us, people who sense there's more to this world than we're told. Leave a like to help this message reach someone who needs to hear it. The more of us who connect the dots, the harder it becomes to keep these layers hidden. Now, let me tell you exactly what I saw after the elevator doors opened. Because that's when everything started to spiral. It started with a deadline. One of those nights where time slips between your fingers like fog. I was at a business hotel near the edge of the city, not one of the chain ones, but the kind. That feels off-brand. Beige carpet, mirrored hallways, and that humming silence only big buildings get when everyone's asleep. I had stayed too long, working late from a rented conference room, and now all I wanted was to get back to my floor, take a shower, and pass out. But when I reached the elevator, something felt wrong. The hallway was too quiet, the lights overhead, buzzing faintly in a rhythm that didn't feel random. I pressed the button, waited, and the doors slid open like normal. Inside, the elevator looked just like every other. Cheap chrome, a faint smear of fingerprints on the handrail, the usual numbered buttons. Except one of them wasn't numbered. Between 6 and 8, there was a faint smudge where 7 should have been. But that wasn't what got me. What got me was the flicker. When I pressed my floor, the button didn't light up at first. Then, without me touching it again, the unmarked one below it blinked red. The doors closed. The elevator began to descend. You know how in most elevators, you feel that little stomach pull when it moves? I didn't feel that. I didn't feel anything. Just a smooth, silent shift, like I was floating rather than falling. I reached out to press the emergency stop, but there wasn't one. Just a keyhole. No alarm button, no intercom. Just smooth, mirrored walls that now seemed to bend slightly inward, like the space was shrinking. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. It looked like the lobby. Same arrangement of couches. Same check-in desk. Even the smell was familiar, like carpet cleaner and stale coffee. But something was off. The air felt heavier. The plants near the windows were brown, shriveled. The windows showed nothing. Just fog pressing up against the glass, so thick it looked like concrete. I stepped out. There was no one at the front desk. No one walking through the halls. No sound. No music playing from the ceiling speakers. Even the TV behind the reception desk was stuck on a static-filled loop of a news broadcast with no anchor, just a headline frozen on screen. Elevator malfunction -3 missing. I looked back. The elevator was still open. I could step back in. I should have. But I didn't. Something in me needed to know where I was. The lobby stretched out longer than it should have. It felt like walking in a dream, where the end of the hallway never gets closer. I passed signs that made no sense. Emergency Lounge C, Transit Core Level 7, Maintenance Echo Bay. None of that existed in the real hotel. I turned a corner, and that's when I saw it. A janitor. Or at least, a man in a janitor's uniform. Pale, mid-50s, bald. Standing perfectly still at the end of a corridor, holding a mop he hadn't moved. His eyes locked on mine the moment I saw him. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. Not until I took a step closer. And then, in a hoarse, dry whisper, he said, "Don't talk. They're listening." That was it. He turned, walked through a door marked Maintenance, Authorized Only, and vanished. My skin went cold, because from that point on, I started seeing that phrase everywhere, scratched into the elevator wall on the next floor, carved into the bathroom mirror, whispered through the static of an old TV playing in one of the vacant guest rooms. Don't talk. They're listening. And I hadn't said a word, but something out there, whatever they were, already knew I was here. I kept walking, not because I wanted to, but because staying still in that kind of silence, that wrong silence, felt worse. At first, everything looked like it belonged. The layout of the floor mirrored what I remembered. Vending machines near the elevators, beige wallpaper with those tacky golden patterns, even that weird fake plant in the corner. But with every step I took, something inside me twisted tighter. The lights overhead buzzed in low, lazy pulses, not flickering, exactly, but like they were breathing. Exhaling light, inhaling darkness. The strangest part was how clean everything was. Too clean. The carpet didn't have a single scuff mark. The walls looked freshly painted, but with a tone that didn't quite exist in the real world. Not beige, not gray. Almost like dead skin under fluorescent light. Even the air had that artificial, hotel-conditioned chill. But beneath it, there was something else. Something metallic. Something wet. I turned the corner, expecting to see the ice machine I'd used earlier. It was there, but it was old, rusted, the kind with the heavy black lever humming faintly. And next to it, a payphone, a real one, attached to the wall like it had been there since 1985. Its cord twisted, the plastic yellowed, the buttons sticky with some kind of faded grime. I picked up the receiver, and before I even brought it to my ear, I heard breathing. Fast, ragged, wet. I dropped it immediately. It swung back and hit the wall with a dull metallic thud, but the sound didn't echo. It was swallowed. I backed away, trying to convince myself it was just malfunctioning. Some weird old phone line still connected to God knows where. But I felt it then, the realization, subtle but heavy, that this wasn't the hotel? Not exactly. It was like walking through a memory of it, or a dream trying to replicate it. Everything was familiar, but just slightly off. Every corner was 2 degrees too sharp. Every door was closed too tightly. Every hallway felt 1 foot longer than it should have been. I checked my phone. No signal, of course. But the screen worked. The clock said 3:33 a.m. Weird, I thought. It had been closer to midnight. Then I passed a wall clock. It was stopped at the exact same time. And then another. Same again. Every single clock I saw, digital, analog, it didn't matter. All frozen at 3:33. A time that didn't move forward, didn't tick, didn't even vibrate with static electricity. Just stuck. As if this place, wherever it was, had broken. Off from time entirely and been left to rot. That was when I noticed the humming. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't coming from vents or machinery. It was ambient, like it was in the walls themselves. A low-frequency vibration that settled into my chest like second-hand fear. Not painful, but alert. Like standing too close to a speaker with the volume turned low, but you feel it more than hear it. I stopped moving. Tried to locate it, but it wasn't coming from a single source. It was everywhere, beneath the floor, behind the glass. Inside, the lights, like the building had a pulse. Then I saw something that made me freeze completely. On one of the hallway walls, above the emergency exit map, was a poster for a fire safety drill. But the date on it said 2003. The ink was faded. The corners curled. I knew that building had only been constructed 5 years ago. I remember because it was part of a corporate real estate boom. So how could there be a fire drill from before? It even existed, and yet the poster wasn't fake. The tape holding it to the wall had collected dust. Its colors had been drained by real time. I touched it, and it crumbled a little under my fingers. It had aged, like it had been waiting here. I turned to look behind me, and that's when I realized I couldn't see the elevator anymore. The hallway had shifted. I didn't hear it, but the corridor I'd just walked down was now sealed by a solid, white wall, seamless, no seams, no doors, just drywall stretching into nothing. The floor beneath me groaned once, like something large had just rolled across it deep beneath the surface. That was when I tried to speak. I don't know why. Maybe just to break the silence. Maybe to ask, hello? Maybe just to remind myself I was real. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. No sound. My lips moved. My throat tensed. But it was like someone had muted me. And then, as if to answer me, the payphone rang. 1, 2, 3 sharp chimes that bounced through the hallway like sonar. No one else was there. No one should have been there. But the sound wasn't. Scary at first. It was familiar. Inviting, almost. I walked back to it, slowly, heart pounding. And as I reached out again, my hand trembling near the receiver, the lights above me flickered once. The phone stopped ringing before I could touch it. And for the first time since I stepped out of that elevator, I realized something else. This place wasn't abandoned, that it was watching. He wasn't supposed to be there either. That's what I realized when I saw the look in his eyes. I had been walking in circles, searching for a way out, when I noticed the faint glow behind a cracked maintenance door. It pulsed like a slow heartbeat, casting a greenish hue over the concrete floor. That's where I found him. A man in a stained janitor's uniform, crouched and unmoving, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. He didn't flinch when I spoke. He just turned his head slowly, his eyes wide and hollow, like someone who had witnessed too much for too long. And then he whispered it. "Don't talk. They're listening." His voice was trembling, like it wasn't even his, like he was repeating something passed down by someone else who had already disappeared. Before I could ask anything, he slipped through a narrow service shaft and vanished into the shadows, like he was part of them. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was oppressive, alive, like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. That phrase wouldn't leave me. Don't talk. They're listening. It didn't feel metaphorical. It felt literal. As I moved through the corridors, long, liminal hallways that never seemed to end, I started noticing things I had missed before. Small speakers embedded in the ceiling, vents that hissed a bit too rhythmically, televisions in waiting rooms that flickered to life just as I walked past, showing static. And sometimes, just for a second, my own reflection, staring back at me, not blinking. Then the phrase started showing up everywhere, scribbled in what looked like charcoal across bathroom mirrors, burned into the corner of a peeling movie poster, whispered, I swear, through the vent of a locked office. The voice that spoke it didn't sound like the janitor anymore. It was layered, mechanical, fractured, like multiple people saying it at once through a broken machine. And always the same 6 words. Don't talk. They're listening. The paranoia crept in slowly. I became hyper-aware of every sound my body made. Footsteps, breathing, even my heartbeat felt too loud. I started holding my breath when I passed certain rooms, convinced there was something or someone just behind the walls, listening for signs of awareness. As if the moment I acknowledged them, they'd acknowledge me back. And I didn't want that. I wasn't ready for whatever that meant. But it's hard not to speak when your thoughts are racing, when your fear needs an outlet. I muttered to myself. Once, just once, under my breath, a quiet, "What is this place?" And the response wasn't silence. A nearby intercom crackled to life. No one had touched it. I hadn't seen a soul in hours. But there it was, white noise, followed by a distant, guttural distortion. It wasn't a word. It was more like a reaction, a presence that had turned its attention toward me. I stood frozen for what felt like minutes. Then the power cut. Not all of it, just in the hallway I was in. One by one, the lights blinked out, like dominoes falling toward me. That's when I ran. Not in a straight line, because nothing in this place stayed straight, but as fast as I could, ducking. Into stairwells, hiding in abandoned offices, trying to remember what floor I was even on. The architecture was shifting. I swear it was. Walls where there weren't walls before. Elevators that moved even when empty. Everything felt alive. And not in a way that welcomed you. In a way that watches. In a way that waits. When I found the janitor's closet again, it was boarded shut, like it had never been open in the first place. But on the wall next to it, scratched into the concrete in what looked like fingernail marks, were those 6 words again, deeper this time, like a warning meant for the next person, or maybe meant for me. I began to think maybe this place wasn't designed to trap your body. Maybe it was meant to trap your attention, your voice, your mind, that the more you acknowledged it, the more you tried to make sense of it, the more it wrapped itself around your thoughts, like a parasite feeding on recognition. And the phrase, "they're listening," wasn't about eavesdropping. It was about harvesting, pulling threads from the edge of your awareness until you forgot where you started, until you became part of the echo chamber. And I could feel that pull starting, subtle, like when you're about to fall asleep and your body jolts you back. Except there's no bed here, no waking up, just layers of loops, patterns of behavior, and warnings etched by those who came before me. People like the janitor, people like me, and maybe people like you. It was a hallway like any other. Same faded carpet, same flickering fluorescent lights, same framed photo of some vague skyline, possibly Chicago, possibly not. But the moment I stepped past the vending machine and rounded the corner, something inside me just froze. There were people there. At least that's what my brain told me they were, but my body disagreed. You know that sensation when your gut clenches before your brain has even caught up, like walking into a room you didn't know was occupied and realizing everyone's looking at you? That kind of instinct. Raw, primal, animal. There was a woman standing at the end of the hall. Mid-40s, pale with hair, so dark it almost looked like it was painted on. She was folding towels over and over in perfect rhythm. A cart sat beside her, filled with identical white linens, all stacked as if untouched. She didn't glance at me, didn't acknowledge me. But I swear, the second I stopped moving, so did her hands. She paused mid-fold, not slowly, just instantly, frozen, like someone hit pause on a tape. Then she started again. Same movements, same speed, like rewinding a loop. I turned left instinctively, and that's when I saw the boy, maybe 10 years old, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, blonde hair, freckles, eyes too wide. He was whispering something to himself. I got closer. 99, 98, 97. His voice was flat, robotic, no breath between words. He reached 82 before, stopping completely, not blinking, not breathing, staring directly at the wall, or maybe through it. And then he started again. 99, 98. Behind a frosted glass panel in a nearby door, I could see shapes, silhouettes of people moving. At first I felt relieved. Human movement, activity. Maybe someone could help. I pushed the door open. It was a lounge of some kind, maybe for hotel staff. But no one reacted when I stepped in. There were 5 of them, all dressed differently. One in a nurse's uniform, one in a business suit, another in a bellhop outfit. They were sitting on plastic chairs, staring straight ahead at a dead TV screen. Static danced faintly across the glass. No sound, no signal. No one spoke, no one blinked. Just breathing. Slow and synchronized, like they were sharing a dream. I stepped further in. The air felt colder here, heavy, like whatever heat should have existed had been sucked out, leaving just enough for survival. One of them, the nurse, turned her head in a sharp, unnatural motion, eyes locked onto mine. Still didn't say anything. I backed away slowly. That's when I started noticing the stares. From everyone. Every time I looked over my shoulder, someone was watching. Not in a curious way. Not in an I wonder what he's doing way. It was more like surveillance, study, like they were recording every move I made. Not with phones, with memory. Or something deeper. Some of them followed me, quietly, just far enough that if I turned too quickly, they'd pretend to be doing something else. Rearranging papers, picking up a tray, staring at nothing. But when I moved again, so did they. I passed a woman in a housekeeping uniform, wiping the same spot on a glass door. Just one hand, one motion, back and forth, for minutes on end. Her face turned as I passed, like her head was disconnected from the rest of her. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes, completely black. No iris, no light. At one point I ducked into what looked like a gift shop. The lights were on. Shelves were full. But every product was strange, off-brand snacks I'd never heard of. Water bottles with no labels, postcards showing cities that didn't exist. One shelf had nothing but VHS tapes labeled in Sharpie. Home. Outside. Return. That's when I saw another one. A man in a hotel uniform, standing completely still between two aisles. Face neutral. No blinking. He didn't move. Didn't breathe until I made eye contact. And then, a smile. Not warm. Not welcoming. Just too wide. He said nothing. But his lips moved. Don't talk. They're listening. The phrase again. My heart was pounding. I turned to leave, and there was a child outside the glass door, watching me. Same boy from earlier? Maybe. But this time, his eyes were bleeding. Didn't know where to go anymore. The floors were looping. The signs made no sense. I passed a room that should have been a vending area, but now it was a laundry. Then later, the same spot became a copy center. The layout shifted when I wasn't looking, but the people, if I can still call them that, were consistent. Always watching, always near, never speaking. I stopped near a stairwell and leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. That's when I heard something from the intercom, faint, static-laced, and deeply distorted. A voice, or maybe several. Don't let him leave. He sees too much. Merge. With us. I ran. And as I passed another mirror, I noticed my reflection didn't follow me right away. It lagged by half a second. My reflection blinked, and I didn't. The feeling I had then, deep in my stomach, can't be described in words. Just dread. Thick, electric dread. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a glitch. This was a place, and these were its inhabitants. And now, somehow, I was becoming one of them. I don't know what pulled me toward that booth. It looked like it hadn't been used in decades. A grimy security checkpoint, tucked between vending machines, that only accepted tokens, and a door marked authorized access only. Which LED to? Nothing. Just a blank, concrete wall. But something about the booth felt different. The light above it flickered inconsistently, not like the others in the hallway. It was slower, deliberate, like it was blinking in code. And the air? It was colder there. Not by degrees, by presence. As if the space itself was remembering something. Inside the booth, everything was coated in dust, thick, undisturbed, but not untouched. The chair had been moved recently. One drawer was open just enough for a sheet of paper to curl out. I hesitated, hand trembling as I reached for it. When I pulled it out, the dust clung to my fingertips like ash. What I held wasn't a security report or an emergency procedure. It was a map dot. It was printed on brittle, yellowing paper with faded black ink, labeled crudely at the top, Level 7 Transit Access Grid. The lines weren't normal. They curved like veins, intersecting at strange angles, connecting places that shouldn't be connected. Subway lines that ran through abandoned malls. Hospital tunnels linked to schools. An old amusement park bridge marked as primary access. Point. None of it made sense. None of it should have existed. But here's the thing. I recognized one of the buildings on the map. A hospital. One I'd visited years ago, where my grandmother had passed. And another. A motel I'd once stayed at during a storm. Both were there, listed as anchors. That word chilled me more than I can explain. Anchors? Anchors for what? The map didn't use city names. It used codes. Long numbers and coordinates. I didn't understand. But at the bottom, written in shaky, red ink, was a phrase that looked like it was added much later. This layer is stitched from memory and decay. Move quietly. I laid the map flat on the booth's desk, heart pounding. It wasn't just showing this place. It was showing all the other places like it, connected somehow beneath our reality, like a patchwork of forgotten corridors and sealed-off rooms. The seventh beyond wasn't just one location. It was a network, and worse, it was accessible. As I stared at the layout, certain intersections began to make sense. I remembered a childhood mall that suddenly shut down, a school wing that was always under construction, a floor in a hotel no one ever seemed to use. They were all part of it, this hidden architecture, this designed absence. There was something ritualistic about the layout, not religious exactly, but mathematical, precise, like someone or something had arranged these forgotten spaces on purpose, calculating the emotional and psychological weight of each one. Places saturated with grief, abandonment, fear. That's what the seventh beyond feeds on, I realized. Places that remember you, but that you try to forget. And then I noticed something else. One of the paths on the map ended exactly where I was standing. The security booth wasn't random. It was marked, circled in faded red. Someone had been here before me. Someone had stood exactly where I was and felt the same rising panic that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone. Suddenly, behind me, the vending machine buzzed to life. It hadn't been working before, but now the screen glitched, displaying 3 letters in static white text. See, here, stay. Every part of me wanted to run. But where? To where the map said, merge point? To the stairwell that never led to the same floor twice? And just then, I saw it. A second map, tucked behind the first. This one was newer, sharper, digital. The words Level 8 Initiation Zones appeared across the top. I hadn't even made it to the deepest layer yet. I was just scratching the surface. The paper shook in my hands. My mind raced. If there were deeper levels, what was waiting in them? If the access grid connected places we thought we'd left behind, then maybe those places weren't abandoned at all. Maybe they were just sleeping, waiting for people like me, lost, unguarded, curious, to step too close. And when I looked back up, the booth wasn't the same anymore. The lights had gone out, but the map still glowed faintly on the desk, pulsing, almost like it was breathing. The hallway curved slightly to the right, narrowing as if the building itself didn't want me to keep going. The air had that sterile, metallic taste, like the inside of an unplugged refrigerator that had been sealed too long. The humming was louder here, a dull mechanical drone that pressed against the back of my teeth. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. A way out? A voice? Just someone who blinked? That's when I found the security door dot. It was almost hidden, half covered by a leaning janitor cart and a wet floor sign so old the letters had nearly peeled off. The door was unmarked, industrial gray with rust around the handle. I touched it, expecting resistance, maybe an alarm. But it swung open with an eerie ease, and I stepped into the control room. I swear, I've never seen a room so cold without actually being cold. You know that sensation when you're being watched through a screen? This room was that feeling incarnated. Banks of monitors lined the walls, old CRTs stacked in towers, humming softly, glowing with that faint green hue like they hadn't been turned off in decades. Thick cables ran across the floor like arteries, coiling around desks, looping into walls. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The screens were showing ordinary places, a school hallway, a hospital corridor, the inside of a subway. Car, but none of them had people. Just motionless scenes drenched in flickering fluorescent light, as if waiting for someone to enter. Then I saw myself. On one of the middle monitors, labeled Level 7, Sector C in peeling black marker. There I was, walking down a hallway, same clothes, same sluggish step, but I hadn't been there. Not yet. I watched the footage, heart pounding in my throat. In it, I paused in front of a vending machine, tapped the glass, looked straight into the camera, into me. I stepped back from the monitor like it burned me, looked behind me. Nothing. Silence. Stillness. The buzzing got louder. The next monitor changed. Static flickered for a second, then resolved into a different hallway. Stark white, harshly lit, a hospital corridor. I watched as a woman in scrubs pulled back a curtain, and the patient she was tending to simply vanished. One frame he was there, the next, gone. No blur, no distortion. Just gone. The woman didn't react. She kept moving like that moment had never happened. Like that person never existed. Another screen turned on by itself. No label this time that it showed. My apartment got from the inside. That same flickering greenish tone bathed my living room in a sickly glow. I could see the clock on the wall, 3:33 a.m. My coat hung by the door. My fridge cracked open slightly like someone had just walked away from it. I leaned in close. My couch cushions were dented, like someone had been sitting there. Movement. On the edge of the screen, just barely in frame, someone walked past the kitchen. I couldn't see a face. Just motion. The gate was off. Too smooth. Too silent. Almost like the hallway people. I reached for the monitor. Pure instinct. And as my fingers grazed the glass, it shorted to static. All of them did. Every screen erupted into snow, and static-filled buzzing. The lights in the room dimmed, then pulsed back bright. The droning stopped. That's what was wrong. The absence of that noise felt louder than its presence. Then, one screen came back on. Not with video. With words. A single phrase, flickering like a warning or a glitch. "We see you too." I staggered back, heart pounding in my ears. That wasn't just surveillance. That wasn't just recording. It was interaction, recognition. Somewhere, something inside this layer, this twisted reflection of our world, was aware of me. I backed out of the room slowly, never taking my eyes off the monitors, as if expecting one of the figures from the other footage to turn, to look directly at me. Or worse, follow Dot as I pulled the door shut. I noticed it for the first time. On the inside panel, carved into the metal with what looked like a key or a knife, was a countdown. Just numbers. 7, 6, 5. And then a blank space, as if someone didn't finish etching the 4, or couldn't. I didn't wait to find out what that meant. The hallway outside felt more narrow now, more warped. Lights flickered above me, not in rhythm, but like blinking eyes, adjusting focus. And as I moved past each bulb, I swear the shadows behind me got longer, thicker, like something was learning my shape. There was something about being watched that made me feel less real, like my own body was just a construct on a screen. And the more I moved through this place, the more I feared I'd end up like the patient in the hospital. Not taken, exactly, but erased. Erasure was worse, because it wasn't violent. It was quiet, permanent, forgotten. And something inside me whispered that that was the point. Not death, not pain, just deletion. And when I looked up again, I saw a sign above the hallway door. The same kind you'd see in an airport terminal. But it didn't say exit. It said playback in progress. I was part of the footage now, part of the loop, and I needed to find the next room before someone hit record again. Walking down a corridor that should have led me back to normality, I spotted it. A heavy steel door marked Return Access in faded black paint, the only thing in sight that promised escape. My chest tightened with hope until I reached it, and the hallway behind me stretched farther, as though the walls themselves were breathing, shifting. I pushed the door open. Behind it was a dim, narrow service stairwell, lit by a single flickering, fluorescent tube. My heartbeat echoed against concrete steps descending into darkness. I hesitated, but desperation drove me forward. The door closed behind me with a dull thud and locked itself automatic, like the building had a mind and purpose. I took a shaky breath and started down. 3 flights later, I emerged into a lobby. It looked like the building's main floor. Polished tile, a reception desk with a bell, stale coffee lingering in the air. Relief surged, but the moment I stepped forward, the elevator doors across from me slid open. It was the same car I'd come in, but its floor indicator glowed ERR. In red. Was that my way out? My breath caught. The doors shut before I could move. When they opened again, I was back in the corridor. Panic crept in as I realized the door was gone. No sign of return access. Just blank wall and a humming corridor stretching endlessly. I ran back, heart pounding, flooded with dread. Could I have imagined it? But the stairwell's odor, the coffee scent, those were too real. A voice called from behind me, a whisper soft yet urgent. If it lets you out, you weren't supposed to be here. I froze. A woman stood in the shadows. Mid-30s, pale-skinned, long dark hair falling around her face, wearing a faded security uniform with no name tag. Her eyes locked on mine, calm but heavy with warning. "They don't want it to be easy," she murmured, as the lights above flickered, then steadied again. "Who are you?" I asked, voice barely more than a rasp. She shook her head slowly, as though weighing each syllable. "Someone who tried. Someone who learned. Every time you think you've found the door, the corridor rearranges your path. It's not random. It's deliberate. A test. A trap." I swallowed hard. The floor beneath our feet seemed to vibrate, subtly, as if aware of our presence. She gestured toward a side corridor I hadn't seen before. Alternate access. A chance spot. "You've got to decide. Do you follow rules of this place or your own instincts?" I followed her forward, adrenaline sharpening my senses. The corridor grew narrower, walls scuffed as though someone had sketched warnings in a frantic hand. At intervals, torn scraps of paper fluttered at my feet. Sketches of door frames, elevator buttons crossed out, the words "Don't." Trust the flicker scribbled across them. We paused at a T junction. On the left, a door labeled "Staff Only," with a cracked glass panel revealing darkness beyond. On the right, a dead-end blank wall. The woman pointed left. No guarantees. But it's a chance. My throat closed, but something primal stirred. A choice between controlled madness and unknown paths. I took a step toward the door, and the lights overhead pulsed once, twice, then steadied. The humming resumed, but beneath it, another layer. Faint footsteps echoing deeper into the wall. Someone or something was coming. She looked at me one last time. "You can't let this place define your escape. Remember that." And with that, she slipped away into the side corridor, disappearing into darkness without a sound. I stood there, trembling, torn between fear and the flicker of hope in my chest. The door loomed. The corridor behind me shifted imperceptibly. I could hear the approach of footsteps now steady, unblinking. The decision weighed on me. Follow the staff door and risk diving deeper into the seventh beyond, or stay and face whatever was coming. I took a breath. Something in me had hardened. I pushed the door open, ready to step into unknown territory, refusing to be guided by entrapment. Door swung wide, revealing, and then the lights blinked out, plunging the hallway into darkness, punctuated by a single red exit sign. I stepped forward into that glimmer of red, and the door closed with a ye-click behind me. As I slipped through the red-lit doorway, I thought I'd found an anchor, something real in this shifting vortex. Instead, I stumbled into what looked like a desolate motel lobby, the kind you'd spot on old horror movie posters. Dusty carpets, broken neon vacancy sign flickering overhead, and a single vinyl booth-style sofa in the corner. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and antiseptic, a mix of human despair and industrial erasure. And then I saw it, a desk with scattered items that felt impossible to ignore. There were torn journal pages, yellowed with age, scribbled with frantic handwriting, names crossed out, dates that made no sense, confessions of voices behind walls. Next to them lay a stack of Polaroid photos, a woman staring into the camera with hollow eyes, a child disappearing into darkness, a figure curled on a hotel bed, uncomfortably still. Each image radiated the same sense of lost reality I felt in my bones. One photograph, however, caught my breath, an overhead shot of a long, empty corridor with a shadowy elevator at the end. I recognized it. That was the same corridor I'd walked. Someone had captured me. Beside the photos was a voice recorder, its red light blinking slowly. I pressed play. A crackled voice whispered, "We're not lost. We're harvested." The words repeated, urgent, echoing in my skull. Harvested, like cattle or crops, taken when they reach a certain point. My breath caught in my throat. I glanced around, half expecting someone to step out from behind the counter, but the motel was dead silent. Only the neon sign sputtered overhead. My hands shook as I rifled through more pages' names. Dates, descriptions of what happened to those who stayed too long, voices in walls, reflections that answered back, doors that opened to nowhere. A diagram sketched a face half glimpsed behind an elevator's flickering light. Someone had tried to map it. As I pieced each story together, an icy dread sank in. This motel lobby wasn't just a stopover. It was a shrine to those who never left, a testament to the layer's purpose. How many had passed through before me? How many had merged with this place, losing themselves until only whispers remained? And if they fed on awareness, what would happen to me once I slipped from conscious mind? The thought twisted like a knife. Perhaps the seventh beyond didn't just trap bodies, it harvested awareness, memories, even identities. In a corner, I noticed a videotape lying next to a portable TV set. I hesitated, then loaded it. Grainy. Footage showed someone entering the wrong elevator, almost like my story, followed by skewed hallways burning with crimson hues. The camera shook. The person whispered, "Don't talk." They're listening, then vanished. The screen went black. A timestamp glowed, 3:33 a.m. Sweat pooled beneath my collar as the words echoed in my mind. This was not just a trap. It was an ecosystem, a network of lost souls feeding each other's fear and attention, binding them into a single echo chamber. A sudden clatter behind me made me spin around. Just an empty corridor receding into darkness. But I no longer felt alone. The lobby's stillness burned with unsaid things, watching me. My gaze landed on the next page in the journal. A hurried note reading, "Don't trust the exit signs," then a smear of red ink. A vindictive warning that even paths out could be illusions. Bait set for the next mine to harvest. I swallowed hard, the weight of every vanished silhouette pressing against my chest. Here, in this motel shrine, the layer acknowledged its power, not just to disorient, but to consume, to absorb identity, to breed paranoia, and I had already stayed too long. My pulse thundered as I pushed myself upright. I knew the next move mattered more than ever. It was time to step out of the shrine, break the echo chain, but with each step forward, the motel lobby stretched a little longer, its shadows deeper. Stepping out from that oppressive motel lobby, I realized the seventh beyond wasn't merely luring people in, it was absorbing them. Every cell of my body felt that the boundaries between lost and found here were blurred, soaked in, layers of fear and memory that weren't my own. And then I saw it, a hallway with walls peeling like scabbed skin, bathed in flickering fluorescent lights. The air vibrated with an almost electrical tension, and at its far end lay a door marked in faint, almost illegible letters, "The Seventh Beyond." Inside, it wasn't a place, it was an amalgam, a mirror layer stitched from fragments of subway, platforms, deserted malls, abandoned hospitals, and silent schools, places once bustling, now emptied and repurposed by this liminal dimension. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, as if the corridor stretched longer with each step. Everywhere I looked, I saw reflections of real-life security desks. Vending machines still stocked, a classroom chalkboard with half-erased equations, but something was off. The air tasted like nostalgia gone wrong. This wasn't just atmospheric creepiness, it was existential horror. The seventh beyond was built from forgotten places, the script under the stage of our reality drawn from psychic echoes, the imprints we leave in places we've been. And it constantly fed off observation. The more aware you were, the stronger it became. Every thought, every reflection, every fear typed into that dimension as fuel. I rounded a corner to find a makeshift shrine. Photos. Candles melted into puddles. Notebooks filled with obsessive drawings of gateways and floors. Handwritten notes urged whoever found them to disappear willingly, become stationary, or don't let it see you watching. It struck me. This place didn't just trap bodies. It trapped consciousness and shaped it, nudging people to become part of its mythology. And then I noticed movement, a flicker in the corner of my vision. A figure standing in the hallway, expressionless, its head tilting just a hair too slowly. It watched me, and I realized it wasn't watching for escape. It was watching for recognition. It knew I knew. It fed on that awareness. My pulse raced. I felt seen in a place that shouldn't see anything at all. I tried to take a photo, but the camera beeped dead. The pastiche of places around me, real and unreal, seemed to shiver, like consciousness itself was distorting the environment. That's when I understood. This place responded to belief. If you accepted its reality, it shaped itself to your expectations, your terror, your memory, your obsession. Not my breath became a whisper. I had to grip the truth. The seventh beyond wasn't just a ghost world. It was a living reflection of human attention. A mirror layer of our world, made from psychic echoes, digital bleed, and abandoned spaces. And knowing it existed made it aware of me. I swallowed hard and took a tentative step forward. I needed to understand more, to piece together what this place wanted from others. But every move I made echoed like a question back at me. Do you believe it exists? And if you do, does it begin to shape you? I thought I had escaped. After what felt like an eternity, trapped in the eerie loops and shifting hallways of the seventh. Beyond, the elevator doors opened to the familiar hum of my own building. I stepped out, breath shaky, heart pounding, relieved to be back in the world I knew, or so I believed. But the unsettling truth was just beginning to reveal itself. Not at first. Everything seemed normal. The walls, the floors, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, they all felt exactly like home. But then the subtle cracks began to show. The clocks scattered throughout the building flickered erratically, never settling on a stable time. They hovered at 3:33, just like the clocks frozen in that other place, the hour when everything seemed to slip out of alignment. It was a quiet reminder that whatever dimension I had entered wasn't content to stay confined beneath some forgotten level. It had followed me back. People around me started to behave strangely. They would glance my way for just a moment too long, their eyes heavy with something unsaid, almost like a silent acknowledgement that I had crossed a boundary I shouldn't have. Their gazes were not warm or curious. They were wary, as if they could sense the residue of the liminal space clinging to me. Some faces in the crowd blurred unnervingly, like they were flickering between versions of themselves, shadows of people caught in two overlapping realities. Then there were the reflections, the mirrors and windows that should have simply shown me back to myself. Instead, I noticed tiny delays, slight mismatches between my movements and my reflection's response, as if part of me was still lingering somewhere else, caught in a time loop or a parallel echo. I would watch myself blink, and my reflection would hesitate a fraction of a second longer before doing the same. It was a glitch in the fabric of reality, a quiet but undeniable proof that the boundary between the worlds was thin and porous. Even the elevator became a source of dread. Every now and then, the buttons would skip the seventh floor entirely, jumping from 6 straight to 8, as if that level was sealed off or erased from existence. Or maybe the 7th floor was still there, lurking just out of reach, ready to trap the next unwary traveler in its endless corridors. The possibility that it could still be active, still waiting, unsettled me deeply. It was no longer a question of if, but when. That nagging thought That feeling that the seventh beyond was not just a place, but an entity, slowly dawned on me. It wasn't content to remain a hidden realm. It feeds off awareness, growing stronger. The more it is known, watching from the cracks and folds of our reality. Awareness is its currency, and once you realize it's real, you become part of its web, visible and vulnerable. Now, every strange sound in the silence, every flicker in the corner of my eye, every unnerving glance from a stranger feels like a message, like a whisper from the layers beneath, reminding me that I was never truly free. The seventh beyond sees me, waits patiently, maybe even follows silently. It's a haunting presence that lingers in the periphery of daily life. Have you ever noticed a glitch in your world? A moment when everything felt off, too quiet, too still, or just wrong? That is the moment you might have brushed against the seventh beyond yourself. It's in those cracks between realities that this place exists. Feeding, watching, waiting. This story doesn't end with escape. It only begins to reveal the lasting shadow it casts on those who've touched it. The elevator may open to familiar floors, but the layers beneath pulse with a life that refuses to be forgotten. The seventh beyond is always there, just beyond. Sight, just outside understanding. Asterisk, asterisk. If you made it this far and felt something strange, a chill you can't quite explain, now's the perfect time to subscribe to the channel. Here, we dive deep into stories that mess with our perception, making us question what's really beyond what we see. And I want you to be part of this journey with me. So if this message spoke to you, drop a comment saying, "I receive," down below. I want to know who's truly connected to these hidden layers of reality. And don't forget to hit that like button. It's a small action that means a lot and helps grow this community of truth seekers. Also, be sure to check out the next video popping up on your screen, because the story isn't over. And you won't want to miss what's coming next. Get ready to go even deeper into the mystery. Because here, the beyond is always closer than you think.